Hello, friends. Um, it is August 4th, which means I will be seeing you all in about a week. I wanted to hop on here real quick and give you the last little bit of information about Pygmalion summary-wise for Act 4, Act 5, and the sequel. Um, so remember, when we come together next week, we'll be spending some time with Pygmalion, so the more you know about it beforehand, the better. All of your summer work will be due Friday the 21st, and that'll be due to Canvas. You can turn in your work act by act, or you can just submit it to one of the turn-ins. And we'll talk more about Canvas next week. But essentially, this entire week, the 17th through the 21st, we're going to be working with Pygmalion, culminating in a Socratic seminar discussion on the 21st. So you want to try and use those first 8 or 9 days of school to get yourself caught up on this summer work. If you didn't do it, or if you were confused, again, I highly recommend you go back and you watch all of these videos. That's what I will say to you on the first day of school. So let's talk about Act 4. So we know that Eliza went to this garden party and she exceeded everyone's expectations, right? Higgins has won the bet. He has proven himself to be the best linguist and linguistic teacher that there is. And so I would probably say that this Act 4 is probably the climax of the play, whereas Act 3 is probably our final rising action, because after this, things start to go back down and they're not as intense. So when they get home, the men, Higgins and Pickering, they're just talking to each other. No one is paying any attention to Eliza. No one says, "Great work, girl, you did it. Like, congratulations, you're the best." They kind of like ignore her and then they go off to bed. So, in that conversation, Higgins is like, "I can't find my slippers. I don't know where they are." And kind of like instinctively, Eliza just goes and gets them and then puts them down. He's like, "Oh, they just appeared magically." Um, and then she gets really mad. Um, and she throws the slippers at Higgins. Um, so despite all of her training and her newfound higher class station, she can't hide her anger or her old ways. She's really upset with Higgins, and she doesn't know what will happen to her. And remember, Mrs. Pierce and Mrs. Higgins already tried to warn Henry about this. They already said, "This is a bad idea. What are you going to do?" Right? So Higgins says that, she doesn't have to go away. She might get married. She could always open up that flower shop, which is why they started the whole thing. And this fight is really a result of their feelings for each other. They really can't get on the same page with that. Because Higgins does not want to change, right? He is not willing to give Eliza what Eliza needs. And I know this is sounding like super mushy and gooey right now. But Eliza is like, "I just want you to respect me and I want you to like be nice to me and treat me like a person." And he's like, "Well, I'm always going to treat you the same. I treat everyone the same." And we know that about Higgins' personality. Um, and so Higgins leaves the conversation. He goes to bed. Eliza goes upstairs, gets her stuff, and she leaves. Um, and coincidentally, Frederick Ainsford Hill is waiting for her outside. He is in love with her. He has been admiring her for some time now. He's standing outside her window. He says, "This is where I am happiest." And he's overwhelmed with emotion and he kisses her. And this leads to them getting caught not once but twice by the police for, making out in public because that's not acceptable. at this time. Um, so he tells the constable, both of them, that they're engaged, they're in love, and in order to stop getting in trouble with the constable, they get in a taxi and they drive around all night. And she says that she's going to explain everything to him. So I imagine in this time, this is where she really explains everything that happened with Higgins and Pickering. And they end up at Mrs. Higgins, so Henry's mom's. They end up at Henry's mom's in the morning. So that is Act 4. And then we get to Act 5 and the epilogue. So in Act 5, we're at Mrs. Higgins' house, and Higgins and Pickering are outside. They're talking to the police because Eliza has run away. They think Eliza is lost. He doesn't know where she is. He doesn't know what's going on or if she's coming back. And then Mr. Doolittle arrives. And surprisingly, Mr. Doolittle is now a middle class person. So remember last time we met him, he was a garbage man. And so now he arrives as he's dressed for a wedding. Turns out he's getting married, but we don't know that yet. He says that Higgins has ruined his life and his happiness by making him a middle class citizen. So, something happened where Higgins was writing letters to an American businessman, and then that businessman left a lot of money to Alfred Doolittle in exchange for lectures or speeches at this type of school. Um, so now Doolittle has come into this middle class money, and now instead of him wanting to like borrow and beg for money, people are coming to him to borrow and beg for money, and he really does not like it. He has no interest in being a middle class person. He just is like, this is not for me, Henry Higgins, thanks, but no thanks. So eventually, Mrs. Higgins explains that Eliza is upstairs, and that she has grown attached to both Pickering and Higgins, but they didn't recognize her accomplishments or, um, like, say thanks. They talked to each other and how they were glad it was over and how they were bored with her now. Um, but Eliza is willing to forgive them and be friends, but she won't go back to Wimpole Street, which is really important because that's essentially her home. And it is where she's like learned to become a lady. And we know that her father won't take her back because now he is middle class and he's marrying this new woman. So she needs to figure something out. So when she comes down, she thanks Colonel Pickering for everything. That he taught her self-respect, and it's not in how a woman behaves, but how a woman is treated that makes her high class. Pickering has always treated her like a lady, even before she was one, whereas Higgins has always treated her like a flower girl and will always treat her like a flower girl, even though she's a lady now. So Higgins is unable to make that switch in his brain. But remember, it's because Higgins treats everyone the same. And when they get into this fight, Eliza and Higgins, when they're left alone after everyone like goes to get ready or goes to the church for Mr. Doolittle's wedding, he tells her, he's like, I'm never gonna change. I'm gonna treat everyone the same all the time because that's just who I am. And she eventually stands up to him, which he appreciates. And then he decides he likes her better. But there really is this like standoff between them where she can't get what she wants from him and he can't give her what she wants. So they are in this just continual battle of like not being able to see eye to eye on something. Um, so Higgins denies his affections for Eliza. He says it was his job, it was his work, um, and that's all it is to him. Even though he'll miss her and his life won't be the same, he really cannot change himself. So Eliza says she won't go back to the gutter, but she will marry, most likely Freddie, for independence instead of staying with Higgins to just be like a maid or not being treated as an equal. And so then we get to the sequel where Shaw says a lot of words, but really only describes a couple things. So Eliza is serious about not marrying Higgins, but that doesn't mean that she's going to give him up. So they're really in this dichotomy where she needs to decide if she's going to serve, that's the word that George Bernard Shaw uses, if she's going to serve Henry Higgins or if she's going to allow Freddie to serve her. So she needs to decide if she's going to be the dominant personality in that relationship or if she's going to give in. And then he goes into this kind of Freudian psychology about Henry Higgins, who can't marry because his mother set an unreachable bar and he did not care for love, as it will always be secondary to his work. So even if Mrs. Higgins died, he probably still wouldn't get married because there would always be something more important, again, like his work. And it's a little Freudian, and we're going to actually talk about this a little bit more when we read Antigone, but it's called an Oedipus complex, so it's a little weird. But so then we get to Freddie, and Freddie loves Eliza. He dresses well, he's a gentleman, he has good social standing. He is gentle, and he's pretty much the opposite of Henry Higgins. He's not a bully. He has no plans to dominate Eliza or bully her or beat her. And he's really just so infatuated with her that he'll do anything. So Eliza does marry Freddie, even though he has no money and no job. Freddie's mother only had enough money to help keep her status, but she didn't have enough to pass it on to either of her children. And then there's like 2 pages about what happened to Clara, which I'm not sure is super necessary for our purposes. But essentially they were worried that that opening up the flower shop would be a huge deal because Clara wasn't married and they didn't want to hurt her chances of getting married. But Clara goes on her own journey of self-discovery, and she likes H.G. Wells, and she meets him, and then she goes to work at a furniture store. So it's really not a big deal. Eliza's father rises in society to essentially high class, but he doesn't want to support Eliza in any of her ventures. They open up the flower shop, but it doesn't make money because they don't have the skills, the knowledge, the schooling to run a business. So Pickering helps them get started. He gets them a bookkeeper. He keeps some money in their account, and Higgins teaches Eliza to write, which not like print write, but like in calligraphy style, which again is a sign of higher education and higher class. And the business eventually becomes successful and starts to run itself. And this is the end of the play. So we get some closure, but not a whole lot of closure. So I'm interested to see how you guys feel about the end of the play, especially since the end of the play is not really the end of the play. And I'm not sure, we're going to have to look at how this section of the text is presented via stage production. because I'm not quite sure if someone is going to come out and just be like, this is what happened. So I'm interested to see how that looks when we take a look at stage production of the play. And so our ultimate question, obviously, and this is the final analysis, and this is what I really care about. And your final essay, this is what I will be grading for sure. Eliza Doolittle changes her outward identity. We know she changes her speech, her mannerisms, and her clothing. And throughout the play, does she change her identity, so her values, her beliefs, or her character as well? Write an argument essay that addresses this question. Support your position with evidence from the play, and refer only to information and events in this play. So the idea behind having you work on these character analysis charts was so that you could kind of track Eliza's development as a character as we moved through the play. All good arguments start with a claim statement, which you can only have two options here. Your options are Eliza's character did change, or Eliza's character did not change. So you want to think about that as you are finishing up the play here. And this final essay, this final analysis is due next Friday. This is the big one. This is like your first writing assignment for me, and it'll give me a really good indication of where we are and what we need to focus on as we move forward. So I hope you all are enjoying this last week of your summer break. It's super rainy today, so it's my last day of vacation. Tomorrow I'll be back at school. So I hope you all have a good week, and I will see you soon.